Grids are a popular type of block that you see all throughout the Magento admin interface. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create a grid which will render a list of all of the models stored in a database table. Let's get started. The process of creating this grid that you see displayed on the page is similar to that of creating a form in the Magento backend. We're going to start in our controller. You can see I've modified my index action so that it represents a landing page for all events and lists them in a grid. I'm doing this by adding a new block to the content. This new block, admin HTML event, extends from the admin HTML widget grid container. This is a special container similar to the form container. You can see we still have the block group and controller parameters, which were also in the form container. And if we look at this parent class, in the prepare layout function, we'll see that it's also concatenating the block group and the controller, just like the form container. When our container adds the grid block, it's adding an admin HTML event grid. This extends from the mage admin HTML block widget grid object, and we need to override two functions. The prepare collection function is responsible for building the MySQL collection. So this is what pulls the list of events from the database. The prepare columns function is pretty self-explanatory. We need to tell Magento which columns we want to display in our grid and also give it information like what is the type of the column. This helps it render the appropriate filters, such as for these date columns. So when we go back to the admin, the resulting grid looks like what we see on the page. Some of the cool things that a grid will do is add built-in filters so that we can filter for certain date ranges, and it also adds default buttons such as the Add New Event button. And as long as we have the appropriate default actions in our controller, it will integrate perfectly with the form that we created in the last video. So let's recap. In this video, I showed you how to create your grid blocks. Remember, you need to create two blocks in order to render your grid. First, you need the grid container, which contains titles, buttons, and the grid itself. Then you need to create your grid block in the appropriate place based on the block group and controller attributes of the container. When you're preparing your grid, you need to override two functions. First, the prepare collection function, which basically prepares the data from the MySQL database. The prepare columns function is going to determine which columns or fields from the database are displayed on the page. Coming up next, I'm going to show you how you can edit individual grid items, so stay tuned.